everyone, welcome to Jolly Molly TV. Today is going to be an exciting video. We are going to work on the last parts of this wonderful Main Street Celebration bench pillow / wall hanging project by Kimberbell. You guys have done such an awesome job. Look what you guys have done. Isn't it amazing? And we're almost there. We're going to jump right in and we're going to work on the sashings. We're first going to work on the horizontal sashings between the rows of the blocks. Then we're going to calculate and we're going to stitch out the vertical sashings that are going to go on the sides. Then we're going to calculate the borders, stitch those out, and attach those. Then you will have a completed wall hanging top. So let's get started. So the first thing that I want to do is take you over to the chart layout of this wall hanging, and let's take a look at where we're going today. So here is the layout of this wall hanging, and you recognize the 3 rows of the blocks that we have. In the last video we did the sashings here, where we did 2 in blue for the top and the bottom, and then we did these middle ones here in red thread. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to attach each one of the sashings to the row of blocks. So the first row of blocks that I want to grab is my general store, and I'm going to grab a blue sashing and a red sashing. So here's the general store block and this row with the cute red truck and the bike. I'm also going to grab my Clover Clips. These are the greatest thing. No pain, no blood on the projects. I'm going to grab some of those, and then I'm going to grab a blue sashing to start with. Okay, we've got the extra strip of fabric that we're leaving on until we're all done with this, and then we're going to trim it to equal the length of the row. Okay, so what I'd like to do first is I'm going to do a layout of kind of how I want the sashings to go. And if you remember in the last video when we were working on the sashings, I mentioned that the sashings have like 2 different directions. Okay, so if you see this, here's kind of a starburst where I put a crystal, and then the design goes down, and then there's 2 stars, or a star and a little starburst on this end. So what I thought would be a cute design element is not have them go in the same direction all the way down, but remember I said we're going to flip it. So I did it. This one here starts with a starburst and goes to the 2 ends. I think I'll put that on the top. Then on the bottom, I was just going to turn this around. So I'm going to have the starburst on the right and the starburst and the star over here. So these 2 are over here, and now they're on this side. Gives it a nice kind of design element. So the starburst kind of go down, up, down, up. It looks great. It gives it a little different focal point in the center there. The star is down over here, star is up. And we're just going to alternate that all the way down. So I think it's a nice little visual change up there, so it's not all totally matchy-matchy. So now that we've figured out how we want this to lay out, we're going to actually attach the sashings to the row of blocks. So I know how I want it here. This looks really good, so I'm just going to flip it over, and I'm going to attach this top with the Clover Clips. Okay, and what I want to do is you can actually feel the batting. Okay, you can see the batting, you can feel the batting. The batting goes there. So we need to include part of this extra over here. So I'm just going to visually line it up so that we're going to have a little bit extra fabric over on this side and a little bit of extra fabric on this side. And then I'm just going to flip it right over. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. That's why I like to leave the extra fabric attached until we're all done, just in case we need some of that. There's nothing like having too short of a piece of fabric and having to deal with that. This way you have a little bit too long, and then you can cut it to where you need it to be. So we're just going to keep attaching Use as few or as many Clover Clips as you like. I tend to, you know, space it out every 3 inches or so, just so it holds it on very nicely and I don't have to worry about it coming loose. And then I always like to put one as well toward the edge there. There, okay, so that looks good. Now we're going to do the same thing for the red, and I kind of peek and double check. Yes, I had my 2 stars over there, so I still have this in the right direction. Going to do the same thing. Going to line it up kind of visually how I like it and turn it over. And now we're going to attach this as well. And what I do, I like to attach mine from the top. So I'm actually going to turn this around because I like being able to see where I'm going and what I'm doing on the top. And then flip it over. And then we're going to attach this row as well. So exciting. This is actually coming together. This video, when you see every piece start to be attached, it's gonna be so exciting for you. I love this part, even with the red thread. Okay, so keep going. Keep attaching. Okay. That looks good. And a couple more. And one more there. Okay, so that looks really good. So now what we can do is go ahead and get the sewing machine out and grab your 1/4 inch foot as well, and let's put that on the machine and let's sew these guys together. Okay, so I got the 1/4 inch foot on the machine, white thread in the bottom and white thread up on top. And we're going to go ahead and we're just going to sew a 1/4 inch seam all the way down the length of this sashing. So I'm going to line it up, foot pedal. All right, and I'm going to go ahead, lower it down. I'm starting just outside where the blue is going to be starting. Do a few more. Okay, now I'm on where the blue block is, back stitch, and just go forward. This 1/4 inch foot, it makes things so much easier. I started out where I had tape on the machine trying to follow this line, and then once I got a 1/4 inch foot, it made things just so much easier. I didn't have to think. I didn't have to worry about whether my 1/4 inch was going to be good or not, because this foot just helps you go. Just make sure the fabric stays up against that guide, and you just sew. So I highly recommend, if you don't already have one, getting a 1/4 inch foot with this guide. I'll even put a link in the description below, just in case you need one. Now mind you, it's specific for your machine, but the link I'll give you is to a distinctive brand, and they make them for all different types of machines. And I am just about run out of bobbin thread. So let's see if I had the miracle. Just to finish! I love when that happens. When you get just enough bobbin thread to finish that roll. That makes a good day when that happens. So I'll have to put a new bobbin in. But let's take a look at this sashing. Oh, that looks awesome. I am happy. I am very, very happy. That's great. Just great. And we can trim off a little bit here on the end. And then I can definitely come over here and just use regular scissors and trim off just outside this block. And I'll go over to the cutting table in a little bit and I'll trim it up to size. But look at that, guys. Isn't that pretty? Okay, let me get a new bobbin in the bottom here, and we're going to do the same thing to the other side. So I put a new bobbin spool in the bottom, and now we're going to turn this around. we're going to do the same thing for this side. Okay. So we're going to start just off the edge there. Start on in. I'm on the blue now. Fabric of the background, that is. And now we're going to sew. So how is everybody feeling on this project? Feeling good? You guys have done so well. Yeah, leave me some comments in the description below. I would love to hear your feelings, how you're doing on this project. If you have any questions, or if you're stuck in a particular area, I can walk you through it. So leave me some comments below, or if you have some suggestions on things you would like to see, I would love to hear from you guys. So we're almost done, and then we're going to secure this at the end, right there. All right. Is everybody excited? Look how pretty. That is just turning out so much better than I even planned. That is awesome. I love that. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to attach the second row of blocks onto this sashing using the same technique. So the second row is the fire station, at least in my chart. But whatever you've decided to be your second row, go ahead and grab your second row. Lay it down here. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to attach it. See if you can see this here. There we go. Or I'm going to attach it to this red sashing. So all I'm going to do is flip it over. So I've got the sashing we just sewed on and the blocks, and I'm going to attach it the exact same way that we did the sashing. But this time I'm going to line it up with the blue block on the edge as well, because I want it to line up so that the side is going to be straight from the first row to the second row and eventually to the third row. So while I'm lining it up with the edge of the sashing down here, see this, I'm also lining up the edge of the block with this blue block here, so it will line up. So when I attach, I'm also going to put one or two on the side here just to keep this in line. I'm not sewing over here, I just don't want it to move. Okay, so now I'm just going to continue down, attaching just like we did for the sashing, all the way down. Can you see it there? Okay, keep going all the way down. And we're going to do this for each and every section, whether we're adding a sashing or we're adding the row of blocks. Okay. And then I come over here and I want to line it up, and I can see I'm off just a little bit on the blue. So I need to reposition here. So I'm going to undo the last couple and get that lined up. That looks good. A little close to the camera there. Can you see it? Okay, and then line up the edge. One more over here. Okay. And then I can come in and say, all right, it's got a little loose there. There we go. So that looks like a good line up. And I can line up, and I check my way all the way over, and we are good. All right, we're lined up. So now I'm going to do the same thing, sewing down this side. The project's going to get a little bigger now. That's a good thing. Okay, so again, I'm going to put that over, put this under the foot. It's going to get a little bulky. I'm going to line it up now with the edge of the block and start sewing. back stitch to secure it, and let's just sew right down. Just keep your fabric up against that guide. So that's going to give you your 1/4 inch. You guys are doing great. This is so exciting. And now when I get to the seam, we've pressed them open, but I want to try to put this underneath it so it sews flat. Otherwise it may sew bunched up, but because I really don't want to get my finger that close, I will use a stylus, or in this case the turning tool, just to keep the fabric down as it goes under the foot. And we'll do that as we get to each one. Okay. And away we go. Alright. So we'll do it again. And go slowly. There's no speed race. I always say slow and steady wins the race. So take your time. If you don't catch it, that's okay. You can use a seam ripper, undo it, and lay it back down and catch it again. And I'm pulling it all the way to the ends and back stitch. Okay. I can take the ends off of both sides. And I'll lay this out a little bit later on the table too so you can see it a little bit better. I'm just going to trim, leaving a little bit. Like I said, we will trim the rest up later. But then look at that. Isn't that amazing? You can't quite see the whole thing. You definitely need a bigger table, but look at that. It is really coming together. Okay, so now that we've got the second row on, what comes next? We need another row of sashing. Okay, we need another row. Let's get rid of the clover clips out of the way. So we need another row of sashing. This is going to be a red row. And if you can see it here, this side we had the two ends. We had a starburst and a star. So now I want those to be on the right side of the block. So I'm going to come over here, and this sashing we're going to attach with, here's the star and the starburst. It's going to be on this side. So we'll take the extra fabric out of the way. Double check. Yep, the star's over there. I want the stars and the starburst over here. So I'm going to line her up, flip her over, attach it, and sew it down just like we did the other sashing. Let's fast forward through this step, and I'll meet you right back. Let's go ahead and trim the end off a little bit. There we go. All right, let's see how this turned out. Oh, take the end off. All right, you ready? Dun, 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 dun. It looks good. Looks really good. Okay, I got the end there. It's sewn in. That's okay. We'll just turn that over a little bit. That's not a big deal. That's cool. Look at that. Yeah. Yeah, no, this end got sewn in a little bit when I flipped it over. I'll just take a little seam ripper and we will take that end out before we sew the rest of it. and that'll be fine. It's off to the edge anyway, but we will undo that. Look at that. Okay, so you know what's next. You got it. We're going to do the last row of blocks. The same technique. This is your farmhouse. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little miniature quilt off for safekeeping right at the moment, because I don't want him to get damaged. So we're going to put him in a safe spot, so that way I don't have to worry about him getting damaged in the process. So now we're just literally going to flip this over, and let's fast forward. Let's clover clip this up, and we'll sew this block on. Okay, so you know what comes next. We have one more sashing to sew on. That looks so cool. All right, so in this case, this part where the starburst and the star was is on that end. So now I'd like to have it on this end. And this is a blue sashing. Remember, the top and the bottom are blue, and the ones in the middle are red. So we have it right. So the star and the starburst are over there. So I got the star and the starburst on this end. So I'm going to flip it over, fast forward, attach, and sew it on. Okay, and that looks good too. So let me get this sewing machine out of the way. Let's lay this out on the table and let's take a look at it. Are you ready? Isn't this amazing? Okay, there's our sashing. First row, second row. Look at this. I need to get a bigger table with a overhead camera that can show all these. So that will be in my next project to get set up in here so we can have a better setup. But isn't this amazing? Okay, now what we have to do is we have to press this, and we have to turn it over, and we have to press open all of our seams. Okay, so when you press the top, use your pressing sheet. Don't go over the crystals or anything, but just press it in sections, because you want this down, but you also want your seams open. So press your seams first, get those down nice and flat, and then you'll come on the top with your pressing sheet and you'll just gently press down. You won't have to do too much, because the pressing of the seams on the back will do most of the work. But just lightly press it down around the crystals. Use the nose of your iron, just the nose part, and press all that down to get it to lie flat. So again, do the back, press open your seams, then press the front. Then we'll be able to measure this. We'll trim up these edges nice and flat, and we'll measure this so that we can see how long these sashings on the side need to be. And then we'll be stitching those out. So go ahead and press everything out, seams first, and I'll meet you back here. So did everyone get their seams pressed open and the top pressed? Okay. So now we're going to figure out how long we need to make the side sashings. So I measured the height of this wall hanging from top to bottom, and mine measures 37.75 inches. So you need to measure yours top to bottom and see how tall your wall hanging is. On mine, 37.75 inches, I think it's going to be best to do 2 of these 14-inch and 1 of this. The design is called a 2x10, but the embroidery field actually comes out to be 9.45 inches long. So that's going to give me somewhere about 37.45 inches long, which will be perfect because 38 inches will be too much, but just under, allowing a little bit of seam allowance. And I know the design doesn't go quite to the edge when it stitches out, so I think it's going to be just perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 2 of the 2x14 designs and 1 of the 10-inch. And I think a really nice placement would be to do a 14 and then do a 10 and then do the other 14. So if I scroll back up here, I'm going to stitch out 1 of these, then I'm going to put a 10 in the middle, and then I'm going to stitch out the 14-inch. That way it's 3 hoopings. You could do 3 of the 10s and a 7, which would give you 37. But I like the length of the design. This is cool too, but it's a little shorter, a little stockier. This, to me, you get a little more of the flow of the design the longer you are. So I kind of prefer, personal choice, the longer, but you can do this as well. It's your call as to what you'd like to do, but that gives you different combinations. You could do 3 of the 12s, that's 36 inches, but then you're going to have a little bit on the end that's not quilted on each end. So I think I'm going to stick with a 14, a 10, and a 14, knowing that it's going to come in at about 37.45 inches. I think that's going to be just perfect. All right, so now we're going to go back to the table, and I'm going to show you where we need to trim up the sides. Okay, so now we're back at the table, and now I just want to trim up this little excess fabric that is on the end of the strips. So I'm just going to take my ruler, I'm going to line it up, and I'm going to trim this first one down here just to make it even with the blocks. And I'm going to bring this one down here, do the same thing. Make that one even. Alright, got it. Come up here, do the same thing for all of these pieces. And so now while I'm doing this, let's talk about what we're going to do on the next step. So now, after we get this done, we are going to cut strips of fabric. Okay? So what we're going to need is we're going to need 2 strips of this, in my case, the white glitter fabric that is cut 2.5 inches wide by the width of the fabric. Just like we did in the last video when we cut these strips, I just need you to cut 2 more. So 2 more strips measuring 2.5 inches wide by the width of the fabric. And normal width of the fabric is going to be roughly 40 inches to 44 inches. And we only need just under 38 inches, so it's the perfect length. So just cut 2 pieces of your sashing fabric. Okay, so I'm going to go on this side, get the top out of the way so it's safe and not going to get cut. All right, and I'm going to trim this side up here. All right. Go for the middle section. Trim this one up. Trim the top row here, right about there. And last but not least, the very top. Okay. All right. So go ahead and cut your 2 strips. Once you get that cut, I also need you to put a fusible on the back of it, just like we did with the blocks and just like we did with the other sashings. We're going to do the same thing. So cut your fusible, your palon, and fuse that onto the back as well. And then we'll be ready to stitch out the next set of sashings, okay? 2.5 inches by width of fabric. Press it out and then fuse on your fusible palon, okay? And I'll meet you back here. The last thing we need to cut before we can start stitching is we need to cut some pieces of batting. According to Kimberbell's chart, for the 2 by 14 inch design, we need to have batting that is 2.5 inches wide by 15 inches long. 2.5 by 15. Then for the 10 inch size, we need 2.5 by 11 inch. Okay, so on the 10 inch, you need a total of 2 pieces of this length. 2 that are 11 inches long, and then you're going to need a total of 4 pieces that are 15 inches long. Okay, so 2 of the 11 inches and 4 of the 15 inch. So let's get those cut, and then I'll meet you over at the machine. Yay, we're at the machine. Okay, the first thing that we're going to do is put a large piece of the polydosho mesh stabilizer in your largest hoop, which I have a 9.5 by 14 inch hoop. Now, if you don't have a hoop this large, that's okay. What you can do is you can use one of the smaller designs. You can do, say, 3 of the 10 inches and then do one of the 7. That would equal 37 inches. And then that would fit in a 12 inch hoop. Or if you only have like an 8 inch hoop, you can just do the 7 inches and space them out a little bit more, just in case you don't have a hoop this large. But if you do, you can use a 9.5 by 14 inch hoop, put a large piece of the polydosho mesh in it, and let's go to the screen and let me show you how we're going to load the designs. We did this in last week's video, but I'm going to show you again because it's kind of a cool thing. So I'm going to go to Embroidery. I'm going to go to the flash drive. Then I'm going to go to my Main Street folder. And I'm going to go to the Quilting Patriotic 1 folder that I made last week. And I am looking for the 2 inch wide by 14 inch design, which is right here. I'm going to bring that up. Everything looks good. I'm going to click Set. Now I want to click Edit because I want to move it over. I want to make room for a second one over here because we want to do these 2 at the same time. So I'm going to click Move. And then you see these arrows down here. I'm just going to press and hold down to the left and watch it just shimmy over there. That's good. I want to leave a little bit of distance between the edge and that one. That looks great. So I'm going to click OK. Then I'm going to click Add because I want to add a second design. I'm going to go back to the flash drive, back to Main Street, and Patriotic 1. Pull up the same design, 2 by 14 inches long. And it's going to bring it in when I click Set right in the middle. Don't panic. That's okay. Because now we're going to move it over to the right. So I want to click Edit and Move. And this time I'm going to use the right arrows. And look at it shimmy its way over. Let me go back to the left just a little bit. That's good. I like a space on the right, space in the middle, and a space on the left. That's perfect. So I'm going to click OK. And now I'm going to click Embroidery. Yay! So now we are literally going to stitch the left sashing and the right sashing at the same time. So when we're through with this, we're only going to have 3 hoopings. If you did them individually, you would have 6 hoopings. So that's double the amount of stabilizer that you're going to use. This way, we are just going to have 3 hoopings. We're going to have 1 hooping for the 2 14 inches. Then the next step will be 1 hooping for the 10-inch design. And then we'll have the 3rd hooping for the remainder 2 14 inches. And by the time we're done, we're going to have 2 nice long strip sashings to put on our wall hanging. One last thing I want to show you is I want to switch the order that it's doing these stitches in. Right now it's going to do all the left, and I want to switch it up so it's doing left, right, left, right, left, right all the way through. So we're going to click Edit, and we're going to look for the 3 spools. Now it's changed. You can't really see it, but when I click Edit, look at what it's done. It's switched it so it's going to do step 1 for left and right, then step 2 left and right, step 3 left and right. And that's what we want to do. So we don't want to have to change colors of threads so often. So now we're ready to go. All right, so we've got white thread in the top of the machine. And now what I want to do is I want to stitch the placement line for the batting. Don't you love how it just automatically went to the second one on the right? Okay, that's awesome. Now we're going to do the tack down next for the batting, but we're going to have to stop it in between because it will continue to automatically jump from this one over to this one. So when it's done tacking this one down, we're going to stop the machine so we can place this one down and then start the machine back up to stitch this one. So you just have to be aware that when it gets done with this one, with these steps, you have to stop it before you get to the second one. All right, so let's grab our batting. We want the long strips that we cut to 15 inches. I'm just going to grab one. And we want to cover that line. All right. And double check that we're good on top. Foot down. And we're going to tack this down. I'm going to take this over to the table, and I'm not going to show you this, but you know what to do. I just want you to trim the excess batting from all around the side, and I'll meet you back here at the machine. Okay, my cutting job isn't perfect, but it doesn't have to be. So now we're going to make sure we leave white thread in the top of the machine, and we're going to stitch out the placement line for the fabric. just like we did in the last video, now we're going to place the fabric down, and it's going to go right on top of that placement line. All right, the sides are going to be right up on top of it. The top part, I want to leave at least 1/2 inch up over the top part. Oops. All right, at least 1/2 inch, and that's where this is going to get tacked down. So what I want to do is do our tape trick, where we do a piece of the embroidery tape inside out, and we're going to place it right above that, and then I want to place the fabric down and press it down on top of that and line it up, and do the same thing at the bottom down here. It's my tape. And do the same thing down here. So there is the bottom, tape goes down there, line everything up and press it down, and just make sure that you are on top, right on top of that placement line, and you've got the 1/2 inch up at the top. Looks good? All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to tack this down. Now remember, when it gets done tacking this strip down, you want to stop it when it moves over here because we have to line the next one up. So foot down, white thread in the top of the machine, and I'm going to use my stylus just to keep things straight. Now get ready to stop the machine when it moves over here. Stop. Okay, you got the hang of this, right? Yeah. All right, we're going to do the same thing. Foot up. Little piece of tape there. A little bit of tape at the very bottom. We're going to take the second strip that we cut. Do the exact same thing. Oops. Line her up. Okay. At least 1/2 inch up at the top. Line it up. And we are ready to go. Okay, foot down. Make sure it looks good. And away we go. And that just worked out perfectly. Yay! Okay, now for the pretty part. We're going to put the blue thread up in the top of the machine. Okay, blue thread is in the top of the machine. Now let's stitch out this design. Again, it should go left and then it should automatically move over to the right, and we don't have to stop it because we don't have to do anything to it. So we can just let it go and stitch out this design. Isn't that pretty? Okay, now what I want you to do now is take the hoop off the machine, take this out of the hoop, and we're just going to cut and trim along the outside of this white fabric just to get the excess stabilizer away. Leave the fabric intact because we're going to use this in the next section. Just take the tape off like we did in the last video and cut away the excess stabilizer so you're left with the fabric strips. And we'll come right back. Okay, so you've trimmed both strips out. So they look like this. Isn't that pretty? Okay, so we're going to put those aside for right now. And we're going to go ahead and do another hooping. Now, because we're doing a 10-inch long design for this one, we can use a smaller hoop. So I have my 8 by 12 inch hoop in the machine. I've loaded it with another piece of the poly no-show mesh, but I have a smaller size of roll of the poly no-show mesh. So I was actually able to use that in this hoop, so it saves a little bit on the stabilizer. I know the wider, larger hoops are very expensive, so whenever I can go down one step in size and use a smaller hoop with a smaller piece of stabilizer, it saves money as well. So for this design, it's going to be the 10-inch long design. We can use an 8 by 12 hoop. So let's go to the machine, and I want to show you just real quick again how we're going to clear this design out, and we're going to bring in the 10-inch one. So we're going to click home, and it says you want to delete the selected pattern. I say okay, and there it goes. So we start from scratch. We go embroidery, flash drive. We've got to go to Main Street. Again, the Quilting Patriotic 1 pattern, but now I'm looking for the 10-inch. Because remember, we're doing a 14, a 10, and a 14, so 28 and 10 is 38, which is our height of the wall hanging. So I want to do a 10-inch. I'm going to click Set. I'm going to click Edit, and I'm going to go to Move It because we want to move it to the left. Hold down the left, and right about there looks good. Click OK. You know what we're going to do now? We're going to click Add. Flash drive, Main Street, Quilting, another 10-inch. Click Set. You know what we're going to do? Edit, move, and go to the right. If this was too fast for you, don't worry, you can just rewind this video to earlier where we did the 14-inch design, or you can even watch video 9 as well. But earlier in this video, I showed you how to do this design. So I just want to kind of make a practice and make it repetitive so that you got it. All right, you got it? Cool. Okay, let's click OK. And we're going to click Embroidery. And we're good to go. Wait, no, we're not. You're saying, wait, you forgot to change the colors. So let's do Edit because we want to put the colors in color order. The spools. And then it's changed it just behind it. And click Edit again. And there we go. Blues together, oranges together, blues together, golds together. All right. Now we're ready to go. Okay. So I put white thread back in the top of the machine. And now we're going to stitch out the placement line for the batting. Now we're going to put the batting down like so. Make sure we're covering that placement line. Get my stylus, and we're going to tack down this batting. what to do now. We're going to take the hoop out of the machine and we're going to trim the excess batting around all 4 sides and bring this hoop back to the machine. All right, now it's going to stitch out the placement line for the fabric. Okay, now what I want you to do is I want you to lay the first strip down, kind of like it was when we first stitched it. Remember, it looked like that? So I want you to bring it up, bring it all the way up, bring it all the way up. Now in the Kimberbell instructions, they have you fold it. I don't think that's necessary, because if you put it up on top, remember we talked about in the last video, you can feel that ditch. If you're a quilter, you know what I'm talking about. You're going to feel that kind of a gully or a dip in between this piece of batting and the batting that's already in this first block. So what you want to do is feel for that ditch and minimize it. Ah, no ditch. Go back. Yes, I definitely have a ditch. Bring it, bring it. Ah, I'm flat up against it. Make sure your sides are right on that placement line. And then get your tape and just put it under the top. Again, feel for that ditch and then press down. So you have a perfectly smooth seam. If you have a ditch, undo the tape and reposition it. But you should feel nothing at that point because the batting is flat up against each other. And then come down here with your other piece of tape and do the same thing. All right? So we are good to go. There's no ridge. But then you thought, well, you could also overdo it. Okay, if you overdid it, you just lift up, come back. I'll show you. Redo that ditch, redo that seam, and press back down. It's really easy to adjust and to move it. You just got to make sure you feel you don't want any seam or any ditch at that point. Okay, I'm actually not quite over this, so I want to move it just a smidgy. Still perfect seam up against that. And now it's going to tack down this strip. Then we're going to stop it before it gets over here to this one. Now we're going to stop the machine. Got it. We're going to do the same thing. Get your second strip, foot up, lay it down just like you had it before when it was just stitched out. Move it all the way up. Start to position on the sides. Oop, I got a ditch, ditch, ditch. Ah, no ditch. Okay. Feel it again. Get a piece of tape. Feel the ditch, go up top. That feels good. And then secure it with tape underneath the bottom, making sure you are lined up with that placement line. Double check your top, you're good. Okay, let's tack this down. That wasn't so bad, right? Right. Okay, so now we're going to put blue thread in the top of the machine, and it's time to stitch out the pretty design. got 2 hoopings done. All right, so we're going to take this hoop off the machine, take it over to a table, take it out of the hoop, and we're going to trim the excess stabilizer away from these 2 strips. And we're going to bring this back, and we're going to do a 3rd hooping. This time we're going to use the 9.5 by 14 hoop again, the large one, because we need to do the 14-inch strips. We only have to hoop and do that one more time, and these strips will be done. Okay, we've got the Poly No Show mesh stabilizer and the large 9.5 by 14 hoop. Now we go one more time. You got this. We are going to clear this out, and we're going to bring back up the 14-inch design to finish out these sashings. So we're going to go home, delete the selected pattern, say yes. Here we go. Embroidery. Go to the flash drive where I have the files. Go to Main Street. Go to the quilting pattern. Now we want the 2 by 14 to finish this out. Click Set. What do I do now? Yes, I click Edit. I click Move. Use these arrows. Shimmy it on over. That looks good. Click OK. Click Add, because we're going to add the design again. Go to the file, Main Street, Quilting. What design do I want? I want the 2 by 14. Bring it in. It's going to put it dead center. We're good. We're going to edit, move, and we're going to shimmy over. I just think this is so cool that we can literally do 2 designs at once. It's just, to me, it's amazing. Click OK. Click Embroidery. Then edit, and then go for the spools. And you can see behind it's changed the colors. So I click edit and it's there. Okay, so we are good to go. So white thread in the top of your machine. And we're going to fast forward through this one because I know you know how to do it now. We just did it twice. So I'm going to fast forward through this, and when we're done, we will have the sashings finished. Here we go. You guys just did the 3 hoopings. Sweet. Okay, so now we're going to take this over to the table And we're going to, again, trim away the excess stabilizer. Yay, look at this. You have the sashings done. Very cool. All right, now before we sew them on, I want to add the bling to them because to be consistent with the other sashings I have. So I'm going to use an SS20 on the large kind of starburst, and then on the small ones I'm going to use a clear SS10. So let's bling this up. Okay, we did it. I added some bling, just like I did on the horizontal sashings. I just added a large 20 in the large starburst and then a 10, SS10 on the smaller ones. And I did that throughout. Isn't that pretty? And I did that on both. So now we are ready to attach these to the top. So set those aside. Let's get the top out. It's getting big, guys. All right. Isn't this pretty? Okay, it's kind of hard to see, but all we're going to do is just like we did for these sashings, we're going to attach the sashing down here. Oh, isn't that pretty? And we can do the same thing if you like, design-wise. So it's kind of hard to see, but see here we've got a starburst and another starburst. We could flip this and make it so these little starbursts and the star are here. And then when we come down here, where we have the two, then we have the larger starburst here as well. So it continues that flow of not being matchy-matchy. It's up to you. It's your personal choice. That's what I love about this. So we're going to do the same thing. I'm lining them up, seeing what I like, and then I'm going to flip it over and we're going to attach it with the Clover Clips. What I want to do is I want to try to line up the design like it is, so that knowing that a 1/4 inch seam, I don't want to cut off either end of the design. So that looks just about right. So we'll get our Clover Clips out, line up the top so you have at least a 1/4 inch, and then line up the bottom right over. Okay, and then I'm going to spot check it and make sure that both ends have a good 1/4 inch so that I don't accidentally cut off any of that starburst. I like that. Okay, again, secure it and then just double check. We got enough on that end, and I'm checking the other side too. Make sure we got enough on that. I don't want to move it down just a smidgen. Okay. Double check. Yep, got at least a 1/4 inch. Double check. Yes, we are good. Okay, so now I can attach it. We don't want to cut off any of the design if we don't have to. So it just takes an extra second to line her up so that we don't have that happen. Guys, I've come so far. All right, and we come over here and keep attaching all the way down. All the way down. Okay. Set it down. Keep attaching. And then we're just going to do the same thing for the other side. And then we're going to sew this together using our 1/4 inch seam allowance. And you've done that before. So you got this. Double check my end. Yep, that looks good. Secure the end. All right, now we can flip this around. Okay, let's get this guy up. This into position so you can see. Again, we can use the same technique. We got the two. I'm going to turn this around. There we go. So the starburst, large one, is offsetting the other two. Just a nice little design element. Okay, we're going to line this up again. And that looks right about right. Flip it over, and then I just kind of peek and see when the starburst ends, do I have about a 1/4 inch? I'm going to bring it down a smidge. There we go. All right. And then we attach. Now, all we have to do is get the sewing machine out, and we're going to stitch these together. Okay, so just like we did before, I'm going to fast forward through these. I'm going to sew these on with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Look at that. We did it. Okay, so now what I need you to do is I need you to take this to your pressing station, and we want to turn it over to the back, and we want to press open these seams. Okay, so I'll meet you back here after you press open the seams. This is really coming together now, isn't it? Looks so pretty. Okay, so now we need to trim off the extra fabric on the sashings that we just added. So I'm just going to line her up. I'm going to position the ruler so it's lined up with that sashing. A little bit more over here. Okay, and then we're going to trim off that extra fabric. Okay, got a little bit on that. That's okay. Not a problem, because that's still going to be in the seam allowance. So we come over here. See, you can make mistakes. It's okay. Yeah, it's pretty much nothing we can't fix. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing. Cut that excess off. The only thing you couldn't fix is if you actually cut the block. Then you have to just redo it, which technically is still a fix. Just not one we want to make, but it's okay. Little boo-boos like that we make all the time. It's part of the process. Okay, so let's line this one out. Right like that. And we got one more. Now this one is going to cause a little bit of a problem, which I realized after I sewed it on and pressed it open. See that here? If I line this ruler up, what's it going to do? It's actually going to cut off part of that star. So what was happened is, as it was stitched on, it stretched and worked its way back out. It's off a little bit. That's okay, because you know what? It's all right. Once I trim this off, the rest of that will probably fall into the seam allowance. Most of that right there is going to get covered up. The design will just end. No one's ever going to see it. You might know it, but like I said, projects have mistakes in them. No one except you is going to know that it's there. So I'm okay with that. It's okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut that off. Okay. Right, and as you can see, like I said, 90% of that is going to end up in the seam allowance. So the design will just look like it ends there. That's okay. The borders are going to be attached. No one is going to nitpick over a small little detail as to why that starburst is slightly hiding. It's okay. We're going to go with it. Like I said, I don't think I have a single project that I've ever done that's been perfect. It's just not how it works. But that's part of the process. We're okay with that. Isn't that pretty? Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I've already pressed my seams open on the back. Hope you've done that on yours as well. So now I'm going to measure, and we're going to do the length of this. It should be the same. We're going to work on the borders, but we're going to work on this length, and my guess is it's going to be approximately the same as what we did for the sashing. It should be. Okay, so I'm just basically folding this in half due to lack of space on the table, and I'm going to measure this top. Okay, so line it up. Don't want to press too hard because I don't want a crease on this, but I'm just going to lay it down enough that I can see, sure enough, it's approximately right where the other one is. 18/18 is 36, half an inch is 37. So when I add the seam allowance in, you're looking at, again, 37.75-ish, between 37 and 38. So now let's go to the computer and let's see which border design that we want to work with and what combination will yield us that, because we want to do the border from this point. See if you can see here just on the screen. We want to do from this end all the way down to this end. And that's going to be the side border. And we're going to do it times 2. So let's go to the computer and let's take a look at the designs.